Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri, June 20th, 2025, 7 p.m. local time. 7 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers lifted off the runway. They carried the biggest bombs ever used in combat. They were flying toward Iran, and almost nobody in Washington knew it was happening. The mission had no leaks, no press briefings, no congressional notification. The pilots crossed Europe, dropped into the Middle East under cover of darkness, and at 2:10 in the morning Tehran time, the first bomb fell. What happened next set off an intelligence war inside the US government. It triggered a firing. It left 400 kilograms of bomb-grade uranium unaccounted for. And 9 months later, it put the United States back at war in the Middle East. This is what actually happened. Nobody was paying serious attention to Fordow back in 2009 when the facility was first revealed. That was about to become a very expensive oversight. Fordow is not a regular building. It sits inside a mountain near the city of Qom, buried under 90 meters of rock. The IAEA had inspectors there, but they could only see so much. What they couldn't see was how close the enrichment equipment was getting to weapons-grade output. By 2023, Iran was enriching uranium to 60% purity. Weapons-grade requires 90. The gap was narrowing. Analysts estimated Iran could sprint to bomb-making material in a matter of weeks if it made the decision. The United States had been watching Fordow for over 15 years. A small group of Air Force personnel had one job for that entire time: figure out how to destroy it. General Dan Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, later described those personnel as having spent their entire careers on this one target. When the president finally ordered the strike, one of them told Kane, "I can't even get my head around this." This decision seemed small at the time. The quiet years of target planning inside classified Air Force facilities. It wasn't. Operation Midnight Hammer was the most classified American military mission in decades. So few people inside Washington knew the timing that senior officials described it afterward as operating on a strict need-to-know basis that excluded even many in Congress. 7 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers flew east from Whiteman Air Force Base. To create misdirection, a second group of B-2s flew west over the Pacific, and news reports began circulating early in the day that bombers were headed toward the Pacific. The decoy worked. As the strike package entered Iranian airspace, US F-35 and F-22 fighters flew ahead to clear the corridor and check for surface-to-air missile launches. No shots were fired. The B-2s flew through undetected. At approximately 5 p.m. Eastern Time, a US submarine somewhere in the Arabian Sea fired more than 24 Tomahawk cruise missiles at the Isfahan Nuclear Technology Center. The Tomahawks hit first. 40 minutes later, the lead B-2 over Fordow dropped 2 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators. Each bomb weighs 30,000 pounds. Each is designed to penetrate hardened underground bunkers. They had never been used in live combat before this night. Days before the strike, Iran had learned the bombs would be dropped through ventilation shafts. They covered the shafts with concrete caps. The US planners learned about the concrete caps. They adjusted. General Kane later said, "The planners had to account for this. They accounted for everything." By 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 14 bombs had been dropped across 3 sites. All aircraft exited Iranian airspace without a single confirmed shot fired at the U.S. strike package. The bombers landed back in Missouri roughly 18 hours after takeoff. President Trump addressed the nation at 10 p.m. The statement lasted 4 minutes. His words: "Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated." That word, obliterated, is what this entire story is actually about. The morning after the strike, the Defense Intelligence Agency produced an early assessment. It was 5 pages. It was classified top secret. And almost immediately, it began circulating outside the people who were supposed to see it. The DIA's preliminary finding contradicted the White House in 3 specific ways. First, the bombs had sealed off the entrance tunnels at Fordow and Natanz. But the lower underground structures, where the most critical centrifuge arrays operate, were possibly intact. Second, most of the visible damage was above ground. The deeper you go into Fordow's mountain, the less certainty there was. Third, at least some of Iran's enriched uranium may have been moved out of the facilities before the strikes. The DIA report estimated the setback to Iran's nuclear program at months, not years. This was not what the White House had said. That's not a typo, by the way. CIA Director John Ratcliffe disputed the DIA's finding. He said his agency assessed the facilities were destroyed and would require years to rebuild. Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell cited the longer estimate, closer to 2 years. The IAEA Director Rafael Grossi offered a third number. He said Iran has the industrial and technological capabilities to rebuild enrichment in a matter of months. So 3 official assessments, 3 different timelines. And Iran had blocked IAEA inspectors from accessing any of the damaged sites. Nobody could actually verify who was right. What happened next tells you a lot about how Washington works. On August 22, 2025, Lieutenant General Jeffrey Cruz, the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, was fired. The White House had been furious about the leaked preliminary report since the day it surfaced. The White House press secretary described the document as a top-secret analysis that very few people in the United States government had access to see. The administration also announced it would limit the amount of classified information shared with Congress going forward. The general who ran the DIA lost his job. The intelligence he produced still has not been publicly contradicted with evidence. 2 days after Midnight Hammer, U.S. intelligence got word that Iran was preparing a retaliatory strike against Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. Al Udeid is the largest American military installation in the Middle East. The base commander ordered an evacuation. Most personnel were moved out. What remained were 2 Patriot missile batteries and 44 soldiers. The oldest of those soldiers was a 28-year-old captain. General Kane described what happened next in a Pentagon briefing. The soldiers listened to chatter about the incoming attack in oppressive heat. They were told to make sure their Patriot batteries were pointed north. Iran began launching short and medium-range ballistic missiles. The 44 soldiers fired round after round from their Patriot canisters. Qatari forces assisted. They intercepted the entire barrage. Kane called it the largest single Patriot missile engagement in U.S. military history. Iran had warned the U.S. before the launches. Analysts have noted this suggests Iran wanted to signal resolve without triggering an even larger American response. The advance warning worked. Trump announced a ceasefire on June 24th and called for peace negotiations. If this is the kind of analysis you don't find anywhere else, subscribe now. Every story on this channel is sourced directly from official statements, court documents, and verified reporting. No opinion, no spin, just what actually happened. By February 2026, the situation had deteriorated significantly. Iran had expelled all IAEA inspectors. No international body had been able to verify what remained of Natanz, Fordow, or Isfahan. Satellite imagery showed activity at several sites, but analysts disagreed on whether it represented reconstruction or cleanup. The missing uranium remained the central problem. Before the June strikes, Iran held approximately 440 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% purity. To reach weapons grade, that material needs to reach 90%. Experts estimated the upgrade itself could take weeks once the decision was made. Nobody had accounted for where all of it went. Reports from European intelligence sources, cited in November 2025 Treasury sanctions filings, indicated Iran had accepted shipments of chemical precursors for solid rocket motor propellant. The U.S. Treasury sanctioned entities linked to Iranian ballistic missile propellant procurement that same month. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched a second round of strikes. This time, the targets included ballistic missile production infrastructure, the Parchin and Sharaud complexes, where satellite imagery had shown reconstruction of buildings housing solid fuel missile mixers. Satellite imagery of Parchin and Sharaud showed construction activity at buildings that intelligence agencies believe house the components for solid fuel planetary mixers, the specialized industrial equipment needed to manufacture Iranian ballistic missiles. The military buildup supporting these operations represents the largest concentration of American air and naval strike power in the Middle East since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. 2 carrier strike groups are now positioned in the region. The USS Abraham Lincoln entered the Arabian Sea in late January 2026. The USS Gerald R. Ford arrived shortly after. Pentagon planning documents, according to 2 American officials cited by Reuters, are now configured for sustained weeks-long operations against Iran if ordered. The real question is not what the bombs destroyed in June 2025, it is what happens next. As of May 2026, Defense Secretary Hegseth testified before the Senate that the United States may escalate against Iran further if necessary. The conflict that began with 12 days of airstrikes in June 2025 has now stretched into its 10th month. Iran insists it is no longer enriching uranium at any known site, and says it remains open to negotiations. The IAEA cannot confirm or deny this because inspectors remain blocked. Carnegie Endowment analysts writing in May 2026 put it plainly, Iran still has the ability and perhaps a greater desire to reconstitute these capabilities, including in smaller, clandestine facilities. These challenges are not particularly amenable to military solutions. As of May 2026, neither Fordow nor Natanz has been inspected by a neutral international body since the bombs fell. This story is not over, not even close. If you want to follow this story as it develops, subscribe. The next video covers what Iran's ballistic missile stockpile actually looks like right now, and why analysts believe it may pose a larger threat than the nuclear program ever did. That one drops this week.